Tonight's Split Screen is an argument about the future direction of 20th century music and presents two films which fundamentally disagree about the value of what is often called new music. New music is a term used to describe the work of composers who use composition techniques which can make their music, at least for many listeners, sound radically different from more conventional and traditionally written pieces. Its musical roots lie in the innovations of earlier modern composers such as Mahler, Debussy, Stravinsky, and in particular Arnold Schoenberg. Schoenberg pioneered the new composition techniques of atonality and serial composition, along with his pupils Alban Berg and Anton Webern. This revolution in musical language was seen as being the musical equivalent of Picasso and the Cubists, breaking with traditional perspective in art at the same time. Since the war, another major innovation has been the increasing use of computers and electronics by composers such as Karlheinz Stockhausen, Yanis Xenakis, and Pierre Boulez to create new sounds for a new age. But the musical world is not totally in harmony about the direction taken by new music composers. Some musicians and composers claim that most new music is extremely alienating for audiences brought up on Beethoven and Mozart. And without audiences, they say, the contemporary composer will cease to have any real cultural role in our society. Both films in the program have been made under the editorial control of men who themselves compose music. The first film has been made by William Murphy, a music graduate and author, and puts the case against new music. After his film, Simon Emerson, a lecturer and composer, will present the argument in favor of new music. But first, the case against.
Not all modern music is like Belshazzar's Feast, a 20th century masterpiece with the audience appeal of the Cup final. There's another kind of modern music, new music, the clever stuff, electronics, chance music, titles like crossword clues. This sounds very exciting, but new music seems to have the audience appeal of bubonic plague.
A lot of it is a bit too intellectual for me. It goes beyond pleasing the audience. It has a bit too deep a message. You know, I enjoy listening to music because it's good music and it gets across to the audience, but beyond that, if it actually just pleases the composer, then I'm not interested in it.
I don't like modern music. I don't find it user-friendly. I don't really understand it.
I'm not interested in stuff which sounds appalling, and there is plenty of modern music which makes me want to switch off, literally when I hear it on the radio, and metaphorically when I'm in the concert hall.
I think very few people understand it, but they may think they do or pretend they do. But I don't understand it.
What's wrong with contemporary music? The link between the composer and the audience has gone. Music isn't the social art it used to be. People think of new music as something intimidating. It doesn't invite them into the concert hall. It invites them to stay at home, in droves.
Here's Karl-Heinz Stockhausen's Stimmung. A group of singers sing one chord for over an hour. Every now and again, one of them stops to call out what Stockhausen calls magic names, in a voice that irresistibly recalls the late lamented Doris Stokes.
Freitag, Samstag, Sonntag, Montag, Dienstag, Mittwoch.
I certainly wouldn't come to any program that features Stockhausen or one of the more modern composers. I can get about as far as Bartók and Stravinsky, and I can cope with that, but I think that the more modern electronic stuff is really not for me.
It hasn't always been like this. Look at the radio music output of, say, 40 years ago. There's no shortage of modern music. Moran, Vaughan Williams, the young Benjamin Britten. Obviously, there wasn't much of an audience resistance problem then. How about now? New music has to be heavily sandbagged between pieces of standard repertory. What happens if this isn't done? One Radio 3 program is devoted entirely to new music. The audience is admitted to be too small to measure. The audience research that was done showed that 46% of the listeners turned off during their most popular broadcast.
Composers who are writing music of a rather esoteric kind feel they're rejected, their audience doesn't understand them, so they form themselves into small groups and become more esoteric, and so they put their audiences still more off. And therefore, the contemporary composer, particularly in this country, doesn't seem to have a function really that he can usefully perform. And this I find very disturbing, because one important part of composing, I think, is communicating.
All through the ages, composers have always faced hostile criticism. But in our own time, something very strange has happened. Many people would say that they don't just dislike what they're hearing, they'd say it wasn't music at all. What does new music guru Pierre Boulez have to say?
It was like Descartes, cogito ergo sum. I momentarily suppressed inheritance. I started from the fact that I was thinking and went on to construct a musical language from scratch.
Look at that one way, and it's a bold statement of artistic freedom for the composer. Look at it another, and it's someone telling you to junk 2,000 years of musical history and think as you're told. We are the masters now. History isn't just bunk, it's over.
And it isn't just the audience that's suffering. When an orchestra gets sent over the top with a new work, they often wind up wondering why they signed up in the first place.
Sometimes frustrations come when it's difficult to know what the composer actually wants. I've always been struck how much the players want to actually get it right and do what the composer is having in mind, but sometimes it's very difficult to decipher what they actually mean.
But the challenges facing musicians nowadays aren't just a matter of getting your fingers, bow, lungs or whatever around the notes fast enough. That was always a problem. And yesterday's monstrosity often turns out to be today's masterpiece. But are musicians still being faced with musical problems?
That was part of Recordare by Kurt Weill, a piece which was declared unperformable in his lifetime. It's since been done, and the problems with it are simply musical and technical ones, different from those inherent in a piece such as this. This is Variation 6 by John Cage. The music you're given, if it is music, consists of lines and shapes. And when you try and start rehearsing a piece like this, you have to yourself work out what on earth is going on. And frankly, with this one, I wouldn't know where to start.
Composers can always rely on a few acolytes to keep their faces straight and soldier on. We're often told that new music is for young people, pure souls without prejudice. But this attempt to hijack the generation gap doesn't always come off.
At the college we were at, they did a series of 20th century concerts like Messiaen and Janacek and things, and the only people that actually went to the concerts were the music students and about 5 or 6 other people.
All we need to do, apparently, is educate the audience. But you don't need 2 degrees in music to understand Walton. For most people, the language of modern music has become unrecognizable. Here's one of the reasons. Arnold Schoenberg gave the world the 12-note technique. You arrange the 12 notes of the scale into a row. You then turn the row back to front, upside down and back to front. You use these shapes to knit your music. It's called serialism. If you're a genius, you can make something of this. If you're not, it's painting by numbers, but it's now the orthodoxy.
The great danger, I think, in its widespread application is that a lot of composers, when they start, feel this is the only way they can proceed. This is the great high road to compositional achievement and compositional success.
Here's another high road to compositional success. On with your white coat and into the lab. Benjamin Britten was worried about exactly this in the 1960s.
He may find himself writing more and more for machines, in conditions dictated by machines, and not by humanity.
This is a machine which is designed solely for the purpose of creating any imaginable sound, or I should say, for electronically creating any imaginable sound that the operator, preferably the composer, knows how to specify. And he must specify it in a kind of detail that has never been possible or necessary before.
To nearly everybody, the real music of the 1960s is rock music. How can it be that Phil Spector's Wall of Sound has lasted better than Ilhan Mimirolu's Agony? Never heard of it? Of course you haven't. But Agony was supposed to be one of the key works of electronic music. Now it's as obsolete as the valves that made it.
Officially, we're now in the post-serial age, but this often turns out to mean that the music has been written using even more mathematical techniques and computers.
This isn't Jodrell Bank. It's a music studio. Or, no kidding, this is the word they use, a workstation. Goodbye, Stravinsky. Hello, Quatermass. Now music is a science.
There's certainly some very radical changes needed. I think among the general musical public, I'd like there'd be a great deal more interest in what is being actually written today. And of course, on the part of composers, some attempt to go forward to meet them.
One such attempt is minimalism, endless repetitions of common chords and simple patterns. Obviously, some composers have understood that there is a problem. But can this be the answer? Composers don't seem to know which way to turn. The way to turn is to the audience. Concepts like melody, consonance, and harmony can be reintegrated into music without compromising the composer's more difficult ideas. And if the composer goes that far with the audience, they'll be more inclined to go the rest of the way with him. Albert Einstein said, "I can only see so far because I stand on the shoulders of giants." It's the same with music. Music isn't some sort of natural phenomenon. We built it. It's like a language. You can't just throw away 2,000 years of linguistic development and expect to be understood. Music grows and changes by adding to the achievements of the past, not by pretending to supersede them. If we keep faith with the past, the future will keep faith with us. And there will be a future.
That was the film presenting the case against new music. The second film of equal length has been made by Simon Emerson, who composes mainly electronic music and lectures at the City University of London. His film argues the case for new music and ends tonight's programme, leaving you to draw your own conclusions about the merits of the two arguments.
There have always been a bewildering variety of styles of music throughout the world. In Europe and North America, art music in the 20th century has indeed fragmented into a terrific variety of styles and inventions. But does it really matter?
Uomo ha un centro, chi le sex e in mezzo en lus. Nel mio centro è il mio corpo, nel mio principio è la mia parola, nel mio centro è la mia bocca, nella mia fine amende, in my end, run is my beginning. L'âme du morceau, par le pied, par la lus, nella mia fine, ne va das Wort, in my end is my music, et te conne ronne.
Stockhausen analysed in detail the quality of the voice and its harmonic content. He reinvented a method of singing in which the singers reinforce individual harmonics of the sung notes. All such musics are experimental. They seek to innovate, to refresh, even to amuse our rather confused century. But experiments can fail and still contribute positively to the development of a culture. Any civilization that doesn't innovate, try new ideas, whether they fail or succeed, is bound to stagnate.
This music isn't actually difficult. It's just that it takes quite a long time to learn. I mean, the music has its technical problems for the player, but they're worth tackling because there's so much in the new sounds that composers are sort of dragging out of the instrument, that it's worth taking the time to experiment and find out what the instrument can do. This piece is built almost entirely from multiphonics, which are lots of notes being played at the same time, and harmonics, very, very high harmonics, so that you get the impression that there are lots and lots of clarinets all playing at the same time. This piece, which is traditionally notated and uses traditional and familiar phrases in it, still uses a lot of the new techniques and a lot of very unusual sounds.
In folk and oral musics, there is, of course, personal creativity. In so-called Western art music, we've seen a move from relatively common languages in the 16th, 17th century, through personal languages in the 19th century, through to almost private languages in the 20th century. How do we heal this breach with the audience? Not by composers going back to old ideas. In the past, universities and colleges have often used very rigid methods of teaching composition, whether classical harmony and counterpoint or their modern serial equivalents. Today we see a much more open approach to style and idea. Which voice are you using there?
I'm using a little repeated note from the nut of the guitar, and and also I'm using that sample of a metal spool winding down.
Yep.
So I'm triggering it from the 6th string, combining it with this.
Yes. You've got several separate voices there, haven't you?
That's right. On the 6th, I have the sound of a metal spool falling to the floor and slowing down. On 5, I have the same sound but tuned up. So I've been through my tuning here and adjusted so that that's going to sound much higher than it would normally. Then that's actually a pencil striking the nut of a guitar, and I have looped it. I put it onto that string, that pitch, and that's a bongos.
Established composers have also adopted and extended the medium.
It all started here in this belfry in Winchester, and we came up here and had all the recording equipment brought up at great length and with great difficulty, and we made excellent recordings of the bell, and I took that to Earcam in France, and with it a recording of my son's voice, singing a few things based on the notes of the bells. The bell has many notes inside it, many partials, and from that rich set of notes which make the structure of the sound, so to speak, I made the whole piece. I like working with machines because they extend the natural possibilities of instruments in a very dramatic way, so I like that continuum. That one can just do more using similar kinds of instrument. I don't see a difference in kind, except that perhaps something like the bell or the gong or the organ have always been... We've always worked with machines, we always will, and the great excitement about working with electronics in this new age is that it makes all sorts of new things possible. The horizons are infinite. It's like taking a microscope to a sound and suddenly discovering a new universe.
Communication systems will allow us to compose, to listen to a vast variety of musics, both electronic and acoustic. Let us encourage this new vitality.